I'm trying out.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. My name is Sean Davis, and I am the chair of Plan RBA. The time is 8:46, and we will now call this meeting to order. Ms. Firestone, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. We've combined the rosters so that we won't call your name 3 times if you sit on 3 boards.
Oh,
Okay, good. Good.
Thank you.
Thanks to Janice, she had that brilliant idea.
All right. Thank
It's
you.
gonna take a while.
Thank you, Janice.
Town of Ashland, Ms. Barnhart. Mr. Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Hodges. Dr. McGraw.
Here.
Mayor Trevette. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Present.
Mr. Patterson. Chesterfield County. Mr. Carroll.
Here.
Mr. Davy. Mr. Petrowski.
Here.
Chair Highland.
Here.
Mr. Engel.
Here.
Dr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Schneider.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Lyle.
Here.
Mr. Spoonhour. Mr. Vaughters. Hanover County, Chair Davis.
Present.
Mr. Ledbetter.
Here.
Ms. Pritchard. Mr. Waddell.
Present.
And Mr. Hudson. In Ranco County, Mr. Bast. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Cooper.
Present.
Mr. Rogish. Mr. Schmidt. Ms. Whitehead. Mr. Mackey.
Present.
New Kent County, Mr. Moyer.
Present.
Ms. Stewart.
Here.
Ms. Pearson. Mr. Hathaway. Powhatan County, Mr. Donati.
Here.
Mr. McClung. Mr. Hall. Ms. Winall. Ms. Morissette. Mr. Kinney. City of Richmond, Mr. Addison. Mr. George.
Present.
Ms. Jordan. Dr. Newbill.
Here.
Ms. Nye. Mr. Poole.
Here.
Ms. Robertson. Chair Stoney.
Here.
Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Rutledge. Commonwealth Transportation Board, Mr. Davis.
Here.
Federal Highway Administration, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Rucker.
Here.
Federal Transit Authority, Mr. Koenig. GRTC, Ms. Adams.
Here.
Ms. Torres. RMTA, Ms. Dean.
Here.
Ride Finders, Ms. Ruffin. CTAC, Ms. Erickson. Senate of Virginia, Senator Hashmi.
Here.
Virginia Department of Aviation, Mr. Harrington.
Present.
VDOT, Mr. Britch. Mr. Totten.
Here.
Mr. Riblett.
Here.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Mr. Trogdon.
Here.
Mr. Sonnenklar. Virginia House of Delegates, Delegate Cousins. Virginia Port Authority, Mr. Edwards, Ms. Vick, Ms. Nelson. I believe I got all my localities and agencies. That concludes the roll call for attendance. Yes.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. This time I'd ask Dr. McGraw if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. McGraw. Well, good morning and welcome to the joint annual meeting of Plan RBA, our Regional Planning District Commission. the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, and the Richmond Regional Transportation Organization. This is a great time for all of us to get together. It's always this time of year, and it wouldn't happen without the leadership from the TPO and the CVTA. So I want to thank Chair Holland and Chair Stoney for helping us put this together. And welcome to Plan RVA. I say that with some ownership here to this building and this facility, because so much in the region takes place right here. So we're glad to have everyone here. We do have a great meeting lined up for everyone, but keep in mind, this is also our second annual Plan RVA Day. Before I may be a little reflective, this will be my last meeting as chair due to a number of things. We've had chairs do an extraordinary job in all of these organizations, but I'm here to tell you that I had a friend of mine tell me, for those who don't know, and raise your hand if you don't know, I was in the Marine Corps. It doesn't come up much in conversation. I normally don't bring it up until about 3 minutes into a conversation. But I had a friend of mine tell me, I had a friend of mine tell me one time who was a chief instructor at a leadership school. We were reflecting years later, and Dr. Newbill, I've shared this with her. He said it was the easiest job he had in the Marine Corps. And I said, really? And it was a very important leadership school that he led. And I said, well, tell me why you say that. And he said, Sean, he said, when I was there, I was with the cream of the crop. He said, everybody there wanted to be there. He said they had a desire to train and lead other folks. And he said, it was the easiest job that I had because of the caliber of people that I worked with. And I said, man, I said, that's my life at Plan RVA. That's exactly what it is. The leadership that we have around this region, the board members, the committee members, the commissioners, the council members that serve in their respective localities come together here, and it just makes the organization and the region so much better. So to have that level of leadership and work with the folks that we work with simply makes this the easiest job I've ever had in my entire life. That said, being a little bit reflective, the staff of this organization and what they do to support each of the localities can't go unmentioned. I remember, I think it was our first Christmas party as I was chair a number of years ago, and I told folks, we have a joint constituency with our staff, and if you're staff here, please stand up and please be recognized, staff. I believe our staff in all of our organizations do serve a joint constituency. While we sometimes as elected folks have different roles, our people serve our joint constituency. And this place is marked by deliverables. The CVTA, the TPO, and Plan RVA. It's not just coming in here and talking about things, some of which are not really sexy all the time, right? But they're really important to someone back at home. And that couldn't be done without the leadership of the folks around the table, the board table, supporting staff, but it certainly couldn't be done. And I really would be remiss if I don't mention this, kind of some of my parting comments, without the leadership that we've had in Martha Schickel. Martha's done a phenomenal job. She's been here for a number of years, but in the 2 years that I've worked with her as chair, we have just seen so many things take place. And I mean, as close to batting 1,000 as you can get, that's Martha. No question. The things that she has done, the initiatives that she's carried out from the executive committee coming through the full commission, and then moving forward and getting those things in place and delivering has been monumental. And that seems like kind of a big word, and it's like, that's kind of strong. It's simply not. These things don't happen when we walk out of this room. We get phone calls, we get a few emails, and we're working on the things back home. And then we get a phone call from Martha, or we get a phone call from another board member. Those things can't happen without the direction and leadership of folks like Martha. And it takes extremely focused executive leadership to make that happen. So please, just join me and just briefly thank Martha for all that she's done, particularly in these last 2 years that I've had an opportunity and privilege to work with her. So. just so you know, Martha loves Marine Corps stories and I always noticed right around her annual review time, she would always start the meeting with, Sean, could you tell me a Marine Corps story? I don't know if there's any connection. It is now my pleasure to introduce our Executive Director, Ms. Martha Schiffer.
I also love when our chair goes off script. Really great. Thank you. That was really kind. Thank you all. I am really thrilled to have everyone here today. Most of you come in and out of this building and in this room several times a month, and it's just really great to see the room full with all three of our boards today. So thank you very, very much. Chet, I'm going to ask if you'll join me as we do our kickoff to tell you what is in store for you this morning. So Chet and I talked a couple months ago and we thought about this idea of kicking off this next fiscal year with this joint annual meeting, really with a goal to begin the conversation with each of you around the future of our region. As you know, this coming year, Plan RVA, the TPO, the CVTA, will be embarking on a number of different initiatives to really propel the region forward. And we thought, what better time than when this group of folks, this group of leaders are gathered together to be able to give us the direction that we need to make sure that those plans reflect the vision for the Richmond region. And so I'm really pleased today to recognize Mr. John Thomas. He's here with us this morning, and he'll be walking us through a program to be able to really capture what you as individual leaders and what you as the collective leadership of the region envision for how we can move and really propel this community forward. John is no stranger to local government and regional cooperation with early career roots in the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments in Ohio, and then later as the Executive Director of the National Association of Counties and the Weldon Cooper Center for Public Service at the University of Virginia. I've had the pleasure to get to know him over the last several years as he was the prime curriculum leader for Lead Virginia and really focuses his energy on facilitating groups to understand the potential of social capital. And so I think you'll hear a little bit about that in his remarks today. But I'm just, John, really grateful for you to be here this morning. I couldn't think of a better fit to facilitate this next part of our program. As you all know, the power of partnerships is really how things happen. And so each partnership starts with relationship building through identifying common interests and ultimately, ideally, building trust. And so it's been really remarkable to watch each of you build those relationships in this room. And we're just so excited to be a part of that. As a citizen, as a resident, it brings confidence to me and my colleagues, I know, with the confidence and the leadership that we have. And we're just really thrilled to be able to embark on this journey with you. Do you want to talk about the next part, or we're ad-libbing? So we've asked John this morning to talk with us about the importance of the relationships and how that can move to facilitate action. John's put together a program that I know will not only be engaging, but will give you a chance to have a conversation at your tables. It's one of the things that Chet and I set out to do this year. We've realized that at so many of the meetings, we are talking at you and you are reacting and responding. And we wanted to flip the script today and give you a chance to be able to give us that direction that we need. So we hope that you came with your brainstorming hats. We've filled you with sugar. And hopefully you have energy to be able to move this conversation forward. But really the goal, again, is to set the stage for our regional strategic plan and all of the planning efforts that we'll be supporting, ranging from transportation and economic development to the environment and resilience to public safety and housing. So thank you, John, again, for being with us this morning and spending about the next hour and a half or so helping us explore the key themes and a vision for our region's future. Our staff, who you saw many of in the back, have poured through many of your local plans, and we've identified some key themes that really relate to the work that we do, focusing on the built environment and understanding how we can make sure that we take what you have written, what you've envisioned for your individual communities, and lift that up to become the priority for the region. So we'll be talking today about infrastructure, the environment, housing, health and safety, economic vitality, equitable opportunity and choice. And we'd like to get your direction on how we can really leverage that language to become the pillars of the regional plans that we're developing this coming year. John, have I teased you up sufficiently?
More than sufficient.
Great, thank you all so much.
Good job, Chet.
You never get a word in edgewise, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Martha. Turn this one on. Or just get away from it. Let's do that.
It's muted.
It is? Okay, you've got it. So, thank you again, Martha. It's a pleasure. A number of you I have had a chance to work with in the past, and so it's a pleasure to get back with you. I was sitting, this is the first time I've been in this room. You've probably all been here before, but I've been sitting here looking at this piece of artwork on the wall. You know, and it reminds me of, Martha mentioned that very early in my career, after I'd spent 7 years in the public school business, I went to work for an organization called the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments, which in Ohio was the version of region planning organization. And one of the things, I learned a number of things there. Many of things have carried over into my career in a sense that don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. But one of the things I found fascinating is, even then, we were talking about the 52 jurisdictions in Toledo, Ohio, metropolitan area, Southeast Michigan, 52 jurisdictions, which are all kind of these little cogs. And I'm looking at them on the wall, thinking, you know, the names are different, but the concept was similar. How do you get those cogs working together? And I have to tell you, I'm just going to share a story with you that one of my learnings was about these cogs. Fairly on, I felt like, well, all these are people representing local governments in the region. They obviously are committed to a positive future for the Toledo metropolitan region. And I should say that Toledo and Lucas County were by far the dominant organizations. They were huge compared to the other 50 jurisdictions. And what I learned after about a year and a half is something practical had to happen with this group to begin to see how the cogs could fit together. So I decided one of the things we could do is everybody in that region, every government in that region, had to have salt and sand for the roads in the wintertime. And I thought, well, they're all buying with other than Toledo, they're all buying on their own. They're not getting any discounts. They're getting socked with costs. And so after about a year, we were able to convince them that what we ought to do is buy a freight. You know, Great Lakes are all about shipping. We should buy a freight that we could collectively purchase, and then everybody would get advantage of this huge discounted purchase of a whole boatload of salt and sand for the roads. Worked beautifully. Even Toledo saved money in that process. The second year, however, a number of jurisdictions came to me and said, we're not going to participate anymore. We discovered that people we used to buy from are really angry with us. And so we lost a lot of cogs in that process. And it has driven with me over my career that something has to happen more than just a transaction. Somehow, we need to find a way, no matter where we are, of finding what can bind people together more than just a dollar sign. And so that has kind of led me through my career, and it kind of leads me to what we're doing today. I've been asked to see if we could get a conversation started about the planned elements that Martha just talked with you about. So the reason you're sitting the way you are is by design. We want to have some conversation happening today. So I'm going to start this way. Probably you know people at your table. You've met them before, but maybe you don't know them well. And so I'm going to ask you if you would just introduce yourself to the people at your table. I'm not going to go the whole room. Tell them your name.
It's nice to see you again.
Where you live. By the way, you guys are going to get distributed here. We're not doing a table. We're not doing a table of three.
Okay.
So pick a table and go to that table wherever you want to go. So tell your name and tell where you live. And then, what do you like about where you live? As an example, my name is John Thomas. I live in Richmond in an area called The Fan. I love it because it's very multicultural, multi-generational, and very walkable. So when I walk the streets, I see people pushing baby carts, walking dogs, and I can tell you over and over, people who are doing that are feeling pretty positive. It's a great place to get the energy of the community. So I want you to introduce, go around the table, tell them your name,
Okay, we gotta go back.
where you live, and what you like about it.
I'm John Moore.
Whatever you
We're not 20 minutes.
I kind of like this just get on my bike and we're working on that. I want to get my
My favorite joke is. I have a house.
You realize that I remember when you were talking about
Years ago, I was working for the welfare department in Illinois, and my director said, if you want to get a problem solved, you have to create a crisis that you can control. And so, if you want to have a conversation, you better be able to turn it off at some point. So, thank you all for coming back quickly. The next part of this is a continuation of a conversation, but in a very different way. Mark, excuse me. I had some surgery a couple weeks ago, and I'm not out of that yet. So those of you who have been down that road realize that some bodies don't respond as quick as you hope they would. So I got a little voice issue going here. So, but Martha mentioned that you are the kind of starting group to a conversation that's going to take place for a number of months now, having to do with implementation of a strategic plan. And I thought a good way to do this is if we could get some conversation started, we could continue the conversation around that plan. And so what I've got is at the end of your table, there are some sheets. You can flip those over and pass them around the table. I'm going to ask you to do a kind of a silent exercise for a moment. The first paragraph that you're going to see lists the key elements of the strategic plan. So what I'd like you to do, we're taking a kind of a, given the breadth of the organizations here, we're kind of taking a transportation look at the elements that are on the page here. And so what I would like to get accomplished this morning is to get from each of you your own perspective about 4 topics, and those are the 4 that I've listed there. And so what I'd like you to do is to look through those 4 and make some notes to yourself about the question that gets asked and how do you react to that. So you will all have different perspectives about that. That's what we want, is the variety of perspectives. Because what we're going to try to do then is to see if we can get some commonality among priorities of what you see. And those can become prompting early elements of what we go after in the strategic plan, not losing anything across that process. So they're prompted not for you to say yes, no, or there's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. It's how do you see that particular issue as the world that you see? So we're going to take a few minutes for you to do that individually. And following that, I'm going to ask you to begin the conversation with each other about how you saw it. Just share. This is not a kind of a judgment about how people see it. It's more a question of we learn from what other people say. And so it prompts your own view. And I find in myself, when I'm trying to explain something, if I write it, I think I've got it. If I try to share it with somebody, I don't quite have it because they're not quite understanding what I said. So I'm asking you to make some notes to yourself that you'll understand. As you explain it to somebody else at the table, they may not understand it, so they may ask clarification. Yes?
In answering these, do you want us to think locally or regionally, the focus?
I want you to respond the way you see it, because it's a fundamental question going down the road with strategic plan. What do we need, how do we need to address that question of local versus regional? So you may see it both ways, and if so, make some notes about that.
Thank you.
Is it clear what I'm asking you to do?
Well, how is this determined? Is that?
Excuse me, when I put this together, I thought we were going to have a little session that talked about the 6 elements. So briefly, and you correct me if I got it wrong, briefly, the staff took all the local strategic plans, analyzed all those plans, to try to come up with what are some common elements of all the local strategic plans, including, from a regional standpoint, what Plan RVA has done in its strategic plan. So they came across these 6 elements as key elements. Obviously, it's not everything that we've done, but the priorities. Do I have that right, Martha? Do I have
Yes,
that right?
and if something's missing, then tell us.
Yes, the last question says if you think there's a priority that's not reflected there, please add it.
Does everyone have a sheet of?
Got plenty. Anybody want two? Okay. We are, excuse me, after you've had a chance to talk among yourselves, we're hoping to have enough time to just get some, from each table, some key points, just so that you all know that other people are doing something similar to what you do.
I didn't get a sheet.
You did good deep voice.
do that anymore.
Kind of like that.
Yeah, all right.
That's what you're doing.
If I could have your attention. Attention comes slowly.
Well, we have to
Some of you, like me, will remember the old days when you had glass everywhere, and you could just tap the glass. Tap people's attention. Glass just doesn't work that way. Yeah. The world of security is taking place here. So, thank you all for this robust conversation. What we want to do now is kind of capture, let me say this first. We deliberately did not put any names on here, but we would like you to leave it, because we're going to collect them and just kind of review what kind of things you wrote on there. Your name's not on it. If you want to have your name on it, you're welcome to do that. But when you leave, just leave that piece of paper on the table and we'll collect them. So what I'd like to do right now, we're not looking for consensus. I'd just like to have you get a feel for the variety in this room around these issues. And when you think about that in the context of if people really know the issues, they're in this room. And so when you think about the complexity of these kinds of issues in the community, we're dealing with people that we hope are going to participate in a constructive way in our communities as we, as regional organizations, try to roll this out into communities. So it's a complex issue. And so the background of that is that you're key ambassadors to that process. And you recognize as an ambassador, everybody in this room who's that role has a different view. And so for the next 6 months, we need to try to find some common views, not to set anything aside, but to see where's the sweet spots for an organization like Plan RBA and the other two organizations here. Where are the sweet spots to pursue soon so you can see results of that? So hopefully this exercise helped prompt that. So what I'd like to do is, we're not going to call on anybody. I mean, I will if I have to. But what I really would like to do is to just start at a table back here. We've got a microphone. Whoever wants to can say, you know, what were a key thing. We don't have to name a bunch of them. What's a key thing that occurred in your conversation? Let's start that table right there. Just hand it to whoever.
You go.
You sure?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. They put me on the spot here, which is unfortunate. Is this, is being seated okay? Should I stand? Would standing is better? Is this better?
That's good.
I'm asking you're the audience, so I'm asking you. The mouse with the audience. Thank you for turning that on. I am loud enough anyway.
I'm loud enough anyway, but I'll amplify for your hearing. And of course, Amy and I will be right behind her, because I've heard her talking as well. I think we all, as a table, and y'all help me team. Okay, it's team. Number one, I put, and some of us put, infrastructure. Without infrastructure, a lot of other things do not materialize as well as they can be. And then I put akin to that, housing diversity. One of the most significant costs of any family is the cost of your housing. If you're homeless, you should know the cost of housing, because you have to live in a hotel probably temporarily. We know about that. I see my friend in Rico, Amen, and
Just stay with one.
just one. Okay. So let's say infrastructure, and the reason why I say infrastructure, and I want you to comment on that too, Amen. The reason I say infrastructure is that you won't have good economic activity if you don't have infrastructure. That's akin to what you need. And briefly, I remember Norfolk just a few years ago lost the Ford plant, great jobs, great economics, because the infrastructure was so poor that they moved to Kansas City. Amy.
Oh gosh, oh goodness. Well, I mean, certainly infrastructure is key for everything that we do, but it's really getting down to the local level and making sure that we have safe streets and that they can be walkable, bikeable, and that they have access to transit. I mean, obviously, those are all the things that we talk about here, but when we think about what actions we take as transportation professionals and as the leaders and how we're allocating this money, it really comes down to the local level. We have a lot of pavement out there, but how are we using it? I think we've seen with the BRT how we've maximized the capacity of that, increasing, movement of people, just making that one investment. And we didn't buy any additional right of way. That was using existing, roadway capacity. So I think that's a perfect example of how we can really maximize the investments that we've made over the past many decades.
Super. Martha, how about somebody from this table? Martha got a mic there.
Okay.
I'll take it, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Jay.
You don't have to stand if you don't want to.
Oh,
That's good.
thank you. We both agreed on infrastructure, but we also both agreed on economic vitality. If you've got healthy neighborhoods, then you've got a tax base that will build upon itself. You've got folks that can go to VCU, Virginia Union, and can better themselves, raise themselves economically, and that will draw neighborhood grocery stores, CVS, and that sort of thing. If you've got an economic vitality, then you get retailers' attention, you get schools' attention, you get other people that want to move into the city of Richmond because of the amenities of the city of Richmond. Economic vitality, if it's healthy and growing, that's the key. Thank you.
How about this table? You had two conversations going at this table. Two separate conversations. Doesn't matter. Whoever will take the mic. There you go.
I wouldn't ask you. That's right. We had some diverse perspectives, and I think it does depend on, it kind of speaks to the diversity of experiences in this room. From a local level and maybe even from a more, rural suburban level, infrastructure was a choice, and echoing really what Mr. Holland said, that you have to have that really as the basis of everything you do. Perhaps we coming from a perspective like, where I work at the state, or maybe you're a larger county or something like that, equitable opportunity and choice sort of rose to the top as well. Everyone needs those opportunities to be able to get to them, jobs, medical, recreation, education, all those things. So just not a consensus here, like you said, but two extremely valid arguments for both of those things. So it really does depend on where you stand is where you sit. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else at that table want to add anything to this?
Yeah, let me add something. One of the things in the number 4 that we didn't come up with much, but something that I found imperative that could be added to the list, but maybe part of the process. You can do as much as you want, but up front, community engagement is vital to getting anything accomplished. Community engagement.
Thank you.
He's talking about
This table, we're going to stick with number 1, but we're making note of that point for number 4. Martha. There we go. You're good.
We didn't get the second half of the table.
So I think one thing about the design of this kind of activity was it forced us to sit together and talk together, and the regionality of this table really kind of showed how the problems are different depending upon where people are living. I think, did you put economic vitality? 2 people put economic vitality. I put safety and health. I'm living in Richmond. We have other people who are living in more rural areas. I see transportation as one of the most dangerous things we do on a daily basis. People are dying, and there's often crashes on 95. And so that's where I'm coming from, right? I'm coming from a kind of dense urban environment now, from Verona, right? Verona. William, however, sees that without the transportation options, the economic vitality, much like Charlie was saying, isn't there. And so I think it's trying to find that balance based on density, based on where people are living, and kind of how we can meet them in a way where they can have a good, economically vital life, but also a safe and healthy life. Great. Keep it short and sweet. Thank you.
Our table, all but one agreed on. Oh, two, okay. But, well, it's 50% infrastructure, but, one thing that, wasn't mentioned here is funding. And to me, that's a light that went off in my head, that's gotta be right in there with infrastructure.
We'll go ahead and represent this side of the table. I was just gonna echo the other, the elected official on that side. I echo what you guys said over there, right? I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from our table is that the regionality of this conversation and even talking about infrastructure, right? Are we talking about, big interstate highways and investments that need to be made to get folks from one side of the state to the other? Or are we talking about, improving sidewalk crossing so that people can not get killed crossing the street or standing on the side of the street?
Yeah.
And we're talking about everything is basically what we came down to. And so, everything is impacted by transportation actions. I think we had a hard time picking just one, which I think proves why we're here, and why this work is so important.
And admittedly, we don't have crosswalks.
You do, but it's not for people.
Well, yeah.
Got more horses.
I guess I got volunteered here.
You spoke up.
We had a variety of conversations, but I think majority of us focused on economic vitality as a critical to the impact. And it was interesting just listening about Richmond City. I live in a different part of Richmond City where we don't have the kind of quality sidewalks, and there's intense reliance on public transportation, and on a daily basis, I see the challenges that so many families have. And it's an economically depressed area as well. We don't have the access to grocery stores or to the kind of growth and jobs that we need. And in fact, people are trying to catch the public transit in order to go to work. And so those are intense challenges. So as we think about the impact that transportation has, economic vitality certainly rose to the top of most of our considerations. But despite all the regional differences that are represented here, does anybody want to add anything else on this table? Thank you.
Well, we did touch base on the safety component because, it is the most dangerous thing to do every day is drive a car. It absolutely is. And coming from a public safety background and seeing what I've seen in my career and seeing the carnage that happens when people don't respect one another when they're on the road, which is really, if you look at the majority of the crashes that occur in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it's really the driver's fault. It's not necessarily always the road's fault. And so a lot of what I look at when we look at road improvements, and I look at the types of ways that we can improve it, is how can we actually get people to, like Mark said a little while ago, not worry about trying to get someone out of their way and trying to be in a rush to get somewhere all the time. It's just really about community, and what Mr. Atkins said about community engagement is critical. We need the input from the community to know really the feedback of what's going on. So it is an unbelievable room when you look at around this room and look at everybody's different background and how everybody's brain works differently and what each life experience is. So we are very fortunate in our communities that all of us have stepped up to do what we're doing. And I thank all of you for it.
Thank you.
See, am I on? I can talk loud if I need to. For our table, we were as equally diverse as every other table, and I think it was very well represented among all of us. So we were split between infrastructure and housing diversity, with a respectful split. But we were going back and forth on both of those, so I would say they probably were equal, depending on which side of how rural your locality is or how urban the city of Richmond is, so.
Just to add to that, what I think I heard the most was when we discussed why we picked what we picked. we really were in agreement. We just, based on where we came from, we looked at it, we were on the same coin, we just were on the heads or the tail side. But we were actually in agreement overall with what it was going to do. And so even when we get the diversity of answers, I think the core of the group actually still all agrees to the same concept. It's just where you're from is what word came out of your mouth, but it didn't change what the other. I think I had infrastructure and LeVar had housing diversity, and we talked about it and we both agreed 100% with each other. It's just what we put down on the piece of paper, but it didn't change the need from both sides of it. So I thought that was important.
All right. So we're the last one, so we're gonna hear a lot of repeat kind of things. Infrastructure, we agreed that there was a lot of things that, like, transportation is the thing that connects everything together here. And so it's difficult to choose one thing that it impacts more than the other. But we also talked about the equitable opportunities and choices and how that affects a lot of those things also. So if you live in an economically depressed neighborhood, you don't have the opportunities to have grocery stores and walkability and those types of things. And so what can we do to improve that connectivity and address all of those things that we need to make transportation more equitable and a vast more opportunity of ways of getting around in this region. So, anyone want to add anything? Okay. Oh.
Make sure I'm on here. Obviously, we're not going to get through all these. You've got other things on your agenda, but I do want to spend just a few minutes, Martha, on the fourth item. We've already had the civic engagement piece saying this is a key part. Is there anything else that you came across in your conversations that is not reflected in the 6 primary pieces?
Education.
Education?
Right here, education.
Okay, education?
Excellence and quality.
Okay,
Thank you.
Emergency management and disaster preparedness.
okay. Emergency management and disaster preparedness was another one
I think that was.
over here?
Yeah, I put, we have a huge advantage in that we have several modes of transportation here. Air, water, rail, roadway, underwater, fiber optic. I don't think we take advantage very well of creating a multimodal region.
Okay. Yes.
Touched on what you said, emergency management, public safety, but local, state, and national security.
Uh-huh. Security issues. They had a fascinating conversation. I was afraid we were going to spend the whole day talking about AI and how the world has changed dramatically, and how do you even know anymore? And it's a security, obviously, a security issue, which prompted that conversation. Anybody else that? Yes.
The one thing I volunteered was the future of work.
Uh-huh.
Because as people start working from, some people work from home, some people have families which, the father may work from home, mom may work, in the office. How do we plan for that in the future? We built all these roads, we built all these roads to lead people from their home to their job. But if you start working at home now, what does that mean for transportation planning in the future?
Yeah, and I live in a neighborhood where a lot of people are working at home, and it changed the nature of the neighborhood. I mean, it's a lot. Well, no, things go on in the neighborhood all day long. It's only happen in the morning. So Martha, I hope we've gotten a start here. One of the things that occurs to me before I close my microphone is that obviously we live in a phenomenal region. I mean, the resources in this region are phenomenal. What this reminds me, however, is no matter where you are in the region, I heard a discussion over here. I mow my lawn with my lawnmower, and a guy across the street has the same size, and he's in a riding mower. And he's always doing is turning and turning and turning. So what hit me in that conversation was, we have so much to contribute to each other. And I think part of that reason that Martha asked me to talk a little bit about social capital was that, and I'm not going to talk about that today, but it's about relationships. And these issues affect everybody, either directly or indirectly, in a different way. And so to the extent that you are continuing to do what you do, and you can bring other people into this conversation about, we may have something you could use, you have something I could use. How do we make that happen without having to do formal legal arrangements about that?
Thank you for sharing.
So relationships are pretty critical to how we in a region deal with these issues. So my takeaway would be the more events that you can have in which you're connecting from a personal standpoint, it helps you realize we live 4 blocks from each other. How long have we known each other? And we didn't know that. And so I don't know what happened at your table when you talked about where you live, but you suddenly discover that person's not very far from me. Or that person's living an entirely different life than I had. I need to learn about that. I need to learn about that and learn from that. So I just want to close by saying, Martha, I think we've got a lot of information here to be circulated. And from a plan standpoint, trying to find the short-term sweet spots is what the organization is all. Obviously, we're looking ahead, but some of these things need to be addressed now. And the things in our own lives, the things we address now and solve, give us encouragement to take on another one. And so that's what you all hear about. So thank you for the time to be with you, and I look forward to listening to continued conversation. Thanks. Thank you.
John, thank you so much, and thank you for being with us this morning. And to all of the members who participated, I know sometimes we sit around and brainstorm, but it's so interesting when you have folks that come in, particularly in this setting, and the diverse ideas that you hear, and then some of the ones that are focused around the same thing. As we went around the table, we all had some of the same priorities, but for different reasons. So I thought that was extremely interesting. Martha shared this earlier, so staff is going to take all of these ideas, going to put the results from this morning's conversations into a big database, and not one that's going to be forgotten about, but one that we're going to take action on, that's going to set the tone for our path forward. Our goal is to integrate all of that into our work program for the entire region. So that being said, that's a great segue. As many know, we at Plan RVA and many of us in the region believe that your work program, your priorities, your goals, particularly in government, have to be integrated into your budget. If it's not in your budget, then it's simply not a priority. And we've all been faced with priorities back at the home front with things that simply can't find their way into the budget. But as a government, outside of your constitution and those types of things and your bylaws and all of that, your guiding document on a daily basis is your budget. And we all know that that's kind of public accounting and public finance 101, both of which I think I got a C in both of them, so thank you, Mr. Howland.
I'm sorry, I got an A.
Yeah, you got it right, which is why Mr. Howland is our finance chair. So once I realized I didn't want to be a CPA, econ was where I went, and that's because, anybody know the Latin term ceteris paribus? Anybody know what that means? It means all things equal. So as folks in econ, we don't have to get it right. If somebody challenges us, we say, well, ceteris paribus, meaning if all things equal, and if they're not equal, then we can be right anyway. So unfortunately, that doesn't happen with budgets. So here at Plan RVA, we believe that our work plan and our budget go hand in hand. And I'm going to ask Martha to come up and share our work plan with us. So when you hear that work plan and you hear the budget, they are inseparable. They work together so closely. And I want to thank all of the folks who have worked on that, from CBTA, all of those members, certainly Plan RVA, the TPO, but a special thank you to Mr. Holland, who has been our finance chair and leader of the financial division for this organization for many years. This wouldn't have happened without you, Jim, and every year it becomes more and more intricate, more and more detailed, more and more complex. And these are just waters that you navigate. Outwardly, it looks like it's easy. I know it's not easy inside, but man, you just make it look so easy. And so we thank you for your hard work. And Martha, would you come and share with us now, please? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, as Mr. Davis said, this year's work program and budget are really the culmination of the efforts over the last several months for the TPO in developing its Unified Planning Work Program, CBTA, and adopting its budget for next fiscal year. So this is the last of the 3 organizations to approve their budgets for this year. And I wanted to just walk through with you in a couple of slides, that won't be too long, some of the key priorities and how that integrates into our organizations. So several years ago, we adopted this practice of putting forward to the board proposed imperatives. There are 5. And so I hope you can read this okay. But the first imperative this year is coalescing our regional strategic plan. And so again, this morning is really the beginning of this conversation. As we move over the next several months, we'll be checking back in with all 3 of the boards to be able to identify how we can put the ideas that you talked about today into practice with our planning efforts. And I will remind everyone or share with those who may not be as familiar, the General Assembly requires planning district commissions to prepare a regional strategic plan. So this isn't an effort just for naught. It is in order to be able to help support the work that you do locally to be able to bridge all of the priorities across the region and make sure that those plans come into action. The second key imperative for this year, and this has been a key priority for the executive committee and the full commission, is to support member jurisdictions through local planning assistance. We have had an emphasis in this area for the last couple of years, and we are going to continue that this year. We have a couple of, I think, exciting initiatives in our work program that focus on developing that, which I'll touch on. And I think what I want to say to you today is this is the invitation, the reminder invitation that we are here to serve you as our member of local government. And so to the extent that we have the resources, the knowledge, and the capacity, we want to be on hand to be your extended staff. And so if there are ways that we can support your team members in getting key projects done, we'd love to talk with you about that. Feel free to reach out to me directly. Barbara Jaycox on our team also leads our local technical assistance program, and we just would love to brainstorm on how we can help move that effort forward. Third priority, this is not new to many of you, but continuing that effort under Saren Adhikari's leadership to serve as the regional data hub. Some of you who were in Atlanta heard from Mike Alexander from the Atlanta Regional Commission. Many of the attendees on that trip were really impressed with the competency and capability. I can tell you that our team can match that. We can probably exceed it. And so we're interested in making sure that we are viewed and recognized in the region as that data hub. Again, the General Assembly, the legislative code that enables planning district commissions names us as the regional data center, not to be confused with many of the local decision-making that you're doing right now. But thanks for that tip, Chris. But we really do want to make sure that we are a resource, not only for your local government and planning efforts, but for the community at large to understand how data can play into and support decision-making. If you're interested in that topic, you can hear a little bit more about it later today in Plan RBA Day. Our session number 2 this afternoon is focused on data-informed decision-making. Fourth key imperative is being the region's convener. We have really loved the idea of creating this physical space where we can pull our communities together to talk about the issues that are most important. And so we want to continue to do that. And so please think about us and how we can play a role to be able to help in that regard. And finally, of course, always not the last of our priorities, but the underpinning of all of this is ensuring compliance and agency sustainability. And so as Mr. Davis indicated, the focus on fiscal stewardship and making sure that we are adhering to all of the requirements, the many requirements of all of our different funding streams is paramount to making sure that we can continue to do the work that we do here in the region. So with that, I'll jump into some of our programmatic things. Our team has been doing a phenomenal job and really trying to triangulate around how do we make sense of all these different planning initiatives. And so we're really zeroing in on contextualizing this. And so the idea is that we want to start leading with this regional strategic plan and connecting the dots for the public to make sure that they understand that the long-range transportation plan, our regional economic development strategy, the housing framework from Partnership for Housing Affordability, our emergency management planning work, all of those things come together as components of this bigger, broader regional strategic plan. And so our staff's focus this year is to make sure that we're contextualizing that relationship, we're integrating those planning efforts and making sure that what we say we need to do in our hazard mitigation planning is consistent with what we say we need to do in transportation planning, so that these really become plans that talk to each other and work together for the betterment of the region. Couple of highlights for you in this coming fiscal year. We're going to be embarking on the revival of the region's comprehensive economic development strategy. We've been working closely with the team at Go Virginia, the Greater Richmond Partnership, Activation Capital, and many others, including your local economic development officials, to socialize this idea. The goal is to be able to make this region competitive when we pursue federal funding through the U.S. Economic Development Administration. So our effort isn't to embark on a brand new economic development planning effort, but to be able to go through all of the existing efforts that are happening in the community, weave them together, fill any gaps that are needed so that we make sure that we comply with EDA's process, and that will enable each of your communities to seek funding from the federal government in that regard. We also will be launching the Regional Housing Market Value Analysis in partnership with PHA. This is a really exciting project because it's going to expand what we've done the last 2 runs of that data effort to the entirety of the region. So in 2017 and in 2021, we were able to partner with Reinvestment Fund and the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation to do a housing market study for Richmond, Chesterfield, and Henrico. And in this coming year, our goal is to expand that process to all 9 of our local governments. We'll be kicking off a green infrastructure plan that really is going to be a connective tissue for many of our different efforts, but really can be a useful tool on the ground for localities, but also to be able to get a clearer picture of what our environmental stewardship, what our green infrastructure, what our resiliency looks like across the region. Every community has different strategies in this regard, and that is okay. We want to make sure that we're leaning into what the priorities are of the communities, which leads me to the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. You all have probably seen a lot of emails and social media blasts about this, but this is really an exciting opportunity as the region comes together to talk about the reduction of greenhouse gases and the strategies that we can employ to do that. This is a brand new planning effort that was kicked off this fiscal year, and we'll be completing the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan in the coming fiscal year. We'll be embarking on the Urban Agricultural Suitability Study, the Richmond Electric Vehicle Initiative Readiness Plan. Both of those are efforts in partnership and in response to needs identified by the local governments, and we're really excited to be able to help move those efforts forward. As many of you know, we'll be kicking off the 2050 update for the Long Range Transportation Plan, and as part of that parallel or at the same simultaneous to that, we'll be kicking off the Rural Public Transportation Study and the Regional Transportation Safety Plan. I hope, anyway, and I hope I'm not biased in this, but this list in many respects reflects a lot of what I heard from all of you today. So it's encouraging to me and hopefully our staff here in the room to know that many of the things that we're kicking off in this fiscal year are reflective of the priorities that we heard from you. So we want to continue to make sure that we're tracking in line with those priorities. And we've left some openings to make sure that we have flexibility. So again, that emphasis on local planning assistance. We're nearing the final stages of launching our on-call consultant bench. And so we'll have a pool of consultants that provide services in a variety of different planning and pre-engineering services that are available to our local governments. It'll be an expedited, it offers an expedited procurement process for you. And it will enable us to activate when we need to gear up with consultant assistance to be able to do that quickly. Again, launching our Regional Indicators Project. We're partnering with our community partners, the Chamber, United Way, Community Foundation, to look comprehensively at how we view data, how we talk about data and demographics in the community, and really be able to track progress over the long haul. And then I heard, and I was grateful to hear Mr. Adkins' comments about community engagement. That's a key priority for us. We need to make sure that we're engaging with our partners, with residents across the region, and reaching into, and thanks to the Public Outreach Committee, they've started to help us brainstorm about how we can connect more into communities across the entirety of our region. And so this year's work program launches our Community Engagement Innovation Lab. And I hope that that connotes what it means to me, to you, in that we're gonna be experimental, we're not gonna be fearful of trying new things, and if things don't work, we're gonna shift our focus. But the idea is that we start to create partnerships in community. Our staff is small but mighty, and we want to make sure that we're leveraging all the partnerships we can to reach as many people in the community as possible to inform our planning efforts. And then last but not least, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the RRTPO recertification. That's a primary responsibility of Plan RVA to make sure that we're complying. Ivan, you're still here, right? So want to make sure that you know that that's a top priority for us. We are proud of the progress that the TPO has made. I don't recall off the top of my head, but I think it was somewhere between 12 and 15 accolades, acknowledgements for the good work that the TPO and the region have been doing in the space of transportation planning. And we want to continue that and make sure that we are one of the best performing, or if not the best performing MPO in Virginia. So moving on to budget, I just want to hit a couple of highlights for you. The entire budget, detailed budget was distributed on June 3rd. From a revenue perspective, $4.8 million are projected. We spent quite a bit of time with our finance committee talking through this, so I want to hit a couple of highlights that we discussed. All of these funds are confirmed sources, so we were very careful to make sure that we weren't aspirational or projected with our revenues, and so all of these are dollars that we've gotten award notifications or we've gotten the actual funding commitment from the funding partner. Just a little bit more than $1 million of that is pass-through. For that, that means that that's money that passes directly through the agency to cover various expenses. That could be to purchase goods on behalf of the region through our Emergency Management Alliance. That could be to support pass-through activities for vendors with the CVTA, or that could include consultant fees. So that is money that just kind of, I was gonna say wash, but that's not a good word to use in a finance presentation. It's money that flows directly through without any kind of operational fee.
This table over here said, nope, can't use that word.
We're not washing money at Plan RVA District.
I did say that for your benefit, maybe that wasn't the best thing. And so the other guiding principle of this particular budget is that we're fully maximizing our available grants. And so we had a long conversation with Finance Committee, and I would be remiss if I didn't just name this, that we're looking carefully not just at this coming fiscal year, but 2026. And so as we have the timing of grants coming in and out and expirations, we want to make sure that we're not setting the organization up to have a dip in future years. And so we're being careful about that. We do have several new grant opportunities pending, and so as we have awards expiring in 2024 and in 2025, we're making sure that we're fully maximizing our new grant specialist to make sure that we've got a new inflow of opportunities coming in. This graph just gives you a view of sort of by program area. So I did some combining just to kind of make the chart look a little bit better, or look a little bit clearer so it wasn't so cluttered, but 2/3 of our projected revenue are earned through services provided to the TPO. So many of you know Plan RVA is the sort of home base organization, and we provide services to many partner organizations, the largest of which is the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization. So that $3.2 million budget was approved by the UPW, approved in the Unified Planning Work Program by the Policy Board back in May. We're going to also continue to identify new revenue sources to support our growth areas. The emergency management, resiliency, environment programs have been growing at a significant rate, and so we're really excited about that. I think when I came 8 years ago, the environmental program was $60,000 a year. So you can see over that time, pushing $700,000 projected for this coming year. We're also going to continue to grow our community development program. That's our newest emerging program, and so that was larger in the last fiscal year, namely because of that very nice award that we got from Virginia Housing, the $3 million Housing Production Award, to be able to partner with nonprofit community organizations to develop affordable housing, and I think Mr. Davis might talk about that in his comments. On the expense side, we have $4.7 million projected. 78% of those expenses are personnel-related investments. This organization is high human capital, and so the majority of the work that we do relies on the team that we have on the other side of the space. And I cannot say enough about the quality and caliber of this team, and my gratitude to the board for being willing to invest in all of us. So $3.6 million is the combined total of personnel, salaries, the benefits, our training investments, development, travel, all of those things that go into making sure that we have a qualified, high-skilled, retained workforce. It does include a compensation pool of 5%. We're working with the finance and executive committees to determine the appropriate way to allocate that. Again, making sure that we don't obligate ourselves to future expenses that we can't maintain. And so we're talking about creative ways to make sure that our staff feel well compensated, but also making sure that we're fiscally responsible. Mr. Holland, I know you always like to know this. At the moment, we are fully staffed. We have 30 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees. One's a regular year-round part-time employee, the other is a seasonal intern. And so that is our staff level for this fiscal year and the numbers that we're operating with. Finally, I'll just mention on capital expenses, those include phase 3 of our office relocation move. So we were able to furnish this beautiful space this past fiscal year, and we'll continue that effort in the back of the house to be able to install new workstations and desks for employees, and also upgrade the meeting room chairs just outside of here. The last point I wanted to make, just back to staffing for a moment, is that if you compared fiscal 2024's budget to 2025, you might have noticed that there was a shift in expense categories related to contracted services versus personnel. I'm really pleased to go back to that point that we're fully staffed. This means that we're able to fully leverage the capacity of our staff, and we are not planning to rely as much on outsourced contracted services this year. And so that's why those numbers are shifting proportionally. Certainly that could change as we move forward if we get new grant opportunities and whatnot. We're prepared for that and talked extensively with the Finance Committee about that as well through our on-call. But we're really happy to be able to move into 2025 with a full slate of staff and to make sure that our leverage of that capacity is fully utilized. That's what I prepared. I'm happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions for Martha? Very well. Ladies and gentlemen of the PDC, you have seen the presentation of the workforce plan and the budget. Chair recognizes Mr. Holland. Is there a motion, sir?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend we approve the budget as presented with the priorities outlined.
Chair's received a motion to approve the workforce plan and consequential budget. Is there a second? Recognizing Ms. Newbill. Thank you, Dr. Newbill, and thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody, for the second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is election of officers. In April, I appointed a nominating committee that included Mr. Atkins, Mr. Engel, Mr. McClung, and Dr. Newbill, who were charged with reviewing the rotation of the officers of this commission. All members agreed to put forward the slate that I will read in just a moment. I just want to take a moment to thank my colleagues again. This meeting's a little bit different because it is a joint meeting and the tone and tenor is different, I think, than a regular business meeting. But I want to thank you all. Serving as chair, which we didn't think was going to be for 2 years, and allowing me that opportunity to work with y'all was fantastic. I always say this, you work on a lot of important things, but the people that you work with, I think, mean the most. And I've got stories and reflections that I won't share here today with many of you. Just a few. Mr. Howell, I think one of the first times we met, we were down at Henricus Park. I had my family with me. It was a Christmas celebration, and we developed a relationship. There's always one little thing that you remember here and there. Mr. Engel working on education. Dr. Newbill and I worked very closely. I remember walking into your husband's funeral and seeing you there that day. And now I will say this, for those who know Dr. Newbill, very poised, very professional. If you have an opportunity to speak with Delegate McQuinn, she has a different side of Dr. Newbill that was very interesting that she shared, and it was entertaining. Dolores was great. I would recommend she come as a guest speaker. Dr. McGraw and I have served together in numerous capacities over the years. I think we went to a political debate one time, and we sat beside each other, and we kind of recognized at the times that we would clap which candidate we were supporting. And Mr. Atkins, I remember calling you and needing some leadership decisions on where we might need to put some things on the agenda at the executive committee. And
your wife put me on hold for a few minutes because you were getting out of the hot tub.
Yeah.
It's coming for you too, Coop.
I didn't
Yeah, Kevin, you had me worried in the hospital with your heart issues, but I remember conversations as y'all were looking for a CBTA director and how y'all labored through that. Going down to Reverend Nelson's church and having to meet with him on a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon to discuss some really important business. And you hosted me in your private office, and we had a very, very lengthy discussion. I remember as I left, there were a number of people in the hallway, presumably needing pastoral advice and guidance, and you had staff members, and they were all held in the hallway until you finished your meeting with me, and I just thought, wow, that was great. Ms. Schneider, when you first came on, we had a conversation around a cocktail table, rather deep conversation, and you and I have only known each other for about 6 months now.
Thank you, sir.
And then Coop, you know, I mean, if you ever get in a vehicle with Henrico County, and it's a number of members of their board and their county administrator, you better be tough. They will wear you out, and they wear each other out. But you and I have not known each other that long, but your leadership is demonstrated in so many areas, up to and including this morning, as you were helping us with some things that needed to take place. And I can't thank you enough for that. So there's so many folks, but I think one of the most memorable things, you know, people's lives change. I remember Mayor Stoney before he was married and had kids. Have you ever shared a dessert with your wife?
A dessert?
A dessert.
I'm sure, yes.
Sure you did, right? Well, I don't know if you recall this, but after we first got elected, we had a regional meeting, we had a dinner, and you and I mean, it was a lot of food. We shared an apple pie little tart.
Yes, in Hanover, yes.
In Hanover.
Yes.
And I suspect I shared a dessert with you prior to your wife. I'm sure it's as memorable to you as it is to me.
As long as you're still talking about it, that sounds good.
But I could go around this room. John, I knew you for years before you served on the board, and you're a tremendous public servant. And then Jordan, I mean, you know, who knew that we would be serving together in this capacity? And you have really stepped up, and I'm so appreciative, and this commission is so appreciative. So I've got a story about everybody in this room. Many would prefer that I not mention those. But I want to thank I do want to thank the nominating committee. And with that, nominating committee has recommended that the chair be Dr. Daniel McGraw from the town of Ashland. The vice chair be Ms. Jordan Stewart from New King County. The treasurer be Mr. Byron Atkins from Charles City County. And the secretary, Dr. Cynthia Newbill from Richmond. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. I'd ask our new officers to come. Now, this is an ad hoc, and I'll be brief. Plan RVA for a number of years has worked so well with the TPO, and the TPO kind of falls under Plan RVA, but not in a subordinate position. And for years, we had a transportation director who the mayor and Mr. Carroll stole from us. And what a great pick for Chet Parsons that went over to the CDTA. And I was a little upset at first, and so I told folks, well, we were getting ready to fire him anyway, so y'all. But y'all picked a great leader over there. Which left a vacancy at the TPO, and many know that the executive committee has talked ad nauseum about appointing an executive director to the TPO. And it simply wouldn't make sense to not have someone who has a proven track record and knows the organization in and out and has a leadership ability and opportunities to lead in some of the challenging environments with that organization when they've already proven that they have done so in other organizations. And so that recommendation is Ms. Martha Schickel to be the executive director of the TPO. With that, I think it'd be appropriate for the Plan RVA members. I'm going to ask Mr. Holland to come up here to have a brief discussion about that. But Mr. Holland is chair of the TPO. Would you care to make some comments?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As chair of the TPO, it's my great pleasure to support and nominate Martha for that position. I've worked with Martha since she's been here. I've been here for 17 years, so I've seen a lot of people transition in the region. As one of the longest elected officials, thank you, Mr. Thornton, and of course, other elected officials from RICO as well. So it's my great pleasure to nominate and support the recommendation of Ms. Martha Schickel to direct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. So we have a recommendation from the TPO. Reverend Nelson, would you care to make a nomination from Plan RBA to make Ms. Schickel the Executive Director of the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Dr. Newbell has a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to reintroduce Mr. Jim Holland. He's done a phenomenal job as TPO Chair, leading the region in such a vital role. Mr. Holland, we can't thank you enough. You served Plan RBA, certainly as Chair of TPO. We welcome your remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. First, it's my pleasure to be here, and with proper, of course, consideration, Mr. Chairman, my father was a Marine, so I do respect the Marines. I just want to say that in World War II, but I'm always tooting the horn of the U.S. Army, particularly. There you go. Thank you, Army. 1775, and of course, as you know, you've heard this statement, it doesn't rain in the Army. It rains on the Army. As a former U.S. paratrooper who jumped from every craft that the military has at Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg, if you will, and Fort Benning, certainly I'm very proud of that. So I just wanted to say that, Mr. Chairman. I do want to hear some more Marine jokes, but Martha, you're going to get used to the Army too. Anyway, so again, let me introduce myself. I'm Jim Holland, Chair of the Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors for the third time, by the way, over my tenure. Thank you to my colleagues here. And of course, I represent the wonderful Dale District, which is the heart of Chesterfield, for those who may not know. Every district in Chesterfield touches the Dale District. Most people don't know that. It's so uniquely scheduled. And so, in serving in that, it's a great pleasure to be here and to introduce.
Patoka has that too.
Sir?
Patoka has that too.
Exactly. In fact, interesting story, I was gonna take up more Patoka last time when I was doing annexing, but I decided not to. I gave you a break. It just took some of Clover Hill. Anyway, so as I expanded and grew, and of course, we've been growing. We have about 78,000 constituents in each district. We have about 380,000 individuals in Chesterfield. We keep growing every day. As you know, we add about 20 to 30 people every day that just keep coming. And I'll share a lot more. But wonderful things about Chesterfield County, I'll share. For the 28th year, we'll celebrate a AAA bond rating, which is a phenomenal treat. Only 1% of the counties in the nation can tout AAA. And it's getting stronger, as I stated yesterday. And it's going to be better next year than it was this year. So we're saving millions and millions of dollars because of that AAA over the years. But anyway, it's my pleasure to introduce the business items for the RRTPO. And also might add to, as it relates to this, is that it's very important to know that my background is in finance. As many of you know, as a certified public accountant in the region. I always let people know that so they'll know not to try to pour the wool over my eyes when it comes to financial statements and the like. And I think it's very important that they know that. But at this point, it's my pleasure to present Mr. Bushin, who will review items in the consent agenda as well as the TIP amendments as stated. Mr. Bushin, would you come forward, sir, at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Holland. So there's two items on the consent agenda today. Both are TIP amendments. They are uncontroversial. They've been unanimously recommended by the TAC. No public comments opposing these projects. Both are existing projects that are already in the TIP. One is related to the Atlee Station road widening in Hanover County. cost of the project has gone up. So we need to update the tip to reflect that change in the estimate and the planned schedule for implementation. The second project is the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority project. That project was added to the tip back in November. When we added just the region's share of the cost, and this amendment is reflecting the entire cost statewide. So it's just changing to reflect the overall statewide cost, but no change to the project. So those are the two items on the consent agenda, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
As presented, been moved and second. Properly second. Thank you. Any additional discussion?
I didn't get the second.
The second is, please state name and John. Thank you. Thank you very much for holding me there. It's been moved and properly second. Any additional discussion or comments? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, likewise. Ayes have it, you should unanimously approve. Thank you, Mr. Bush, and we appreciate that so very much for approving the agenda items. Anything else, Mr. Bush, you'd like to add at this point? You're all set? All right, and so that's approved. And of course, just a comment or two here, I want to say that, I'm very, for many of you may not know, but I'm so pleased to have this opportunity to be here as chair. I know I've stepped aside a year or two ago. Mr. Winslow was not re-elected, I think my colleague, because I have teaching responsibilities as a professor of accounting at VCU for the last 20 years. Some of the people you see around the region I've taught have come through my accounting class, having been at VCU for 20 years as professor of accounting. After a 27-year of corporate America, with two of the biggest corporations in the world, Dow Chemical and Philip Morris USA of Trio, if you will, currently. And so also in my 17th year as a board member for Chesterfield County. And I want to take this opportunity, and because of that, in my teaching schedule, I teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays, by the way, and I have to leave the meetings, and so I said, hey, the teaching is broad, and so that's why you'll see me transitioning away from this, because my students come first, as you well know. And in that regard, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as chair. And I want to also thank Mayor Stoney, whom I've known before. He was in a Commonwealth office, by the way, with the former governor. And thank him for his 8 years of service in the region. I've served with 3 mayors, Honorable Governor Wilder, when he came in, and of course, his second mayor as well, First Baptist Church pastor, and certainly with Mayor Stoney. So it's been a wonderful tenure. And so as a result of that, the election of officers for the Richmond Region Transportation Planning Organization, as you know, this process is very orderly, which we appreciate in the bylaws. Where's my attorney? In the back. Thank you. Raise your hand so he can confirm. It's very orderly. We rotate by locality. And so as a result, you're rotating accordingly. And so I want to present the new officers for fiscal year 25. And please, of course, you've seen them before, but chair is Ms. Cynthia Newbill, the city of Richmond. Would you care to stand so they can make sure they see you? Vice Chair, Mr. Jody Roden, Bishop of Henrico, and Secretary, Ms. Shipple, the director now, thank you. And of course, to present these as nominees, may I have a motion to approve them as upcoming officers for the current fiscal year?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and
Second.
properly second. Thank you. Make sure we get the names. Thank you. All right, names as well. It's been moved properly second. Additional comments or discussions or nominations from the floor? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Those opposed, likewise. Ayes have it. Issue unanimous. Congratulations to our new officer. And that does it for me, Mr. Chairman, at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. It's now my pleasure to make 2 very special announcements in celebration of this past year. Employer of the Year Award was established in 2023 in recognition of Jen Lee, who was a faithful public servant of the region. Plan RVA Employee of the Year Award was established in his honor when he retired and has been a way to recognize outstanding performance of a Plan RVA employee. I am pleased to announce that this year's award for Plan RVA Employee of the Year. The employee was nominated by multiple peers and should be commended for outstanding service to the organization in the region. Quote, a fantastic leader with a clear vision of what needs to happen to make things come together. Calm, level-headed, and is a good team player. a role model for others in the agency, and brilliant when it comes to solving problems. You sound like all the things Martha says about her board. I appreciate his flexible and easygoing nature and that he is welcoming to ideas. Quote, I feel confident in his leadership. And lastly, excels at clearly explaining complicated transportation planning efforts and has expert knowledge of those who have less experience and provides help to them. I am pleased to present this year's Employee of the Year Award to Miles Bushing, our Director of Transportation.
Well, thank you.
There you go.
And it's been my privilege stepping into this Director of Transportation role, and I've really appreciated the chance to work with everyone. I look forward to continue working with you at the CVTA and the TPO and Plan RVA.
All right, Miles. I saw that red top, I swear I thought it was Makers. I was like, wow. Thank you. It's heavy. Miles, we appreciate you more than you know, And obviously, you have the respect and admiration of your peers. Announcing a new award this year, the Patricia Page Excellence in Regional Leadership Award. In December 2024, we celebrated the life and service of New Kent County Supervisor Patricia Page, who was a dedicated public servant, a beacon of leadership, and a true champion of civic life. Ms. Page was more than a local elected official. She was a guiding force, a steadfast advocate, and a symbol of unwavering commitment to the welfare of New Kent County and to the entire Richmond region. Ms. Page approached every task with meticulous attention to detail, a keen intellect, and a tireless work effort. Her tenure was marked by a series of accomplishments that shaped the trajectory of the region, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape she so ardently worked to improve. A true leader, Ms. Page commanded respect and admiration from her peers, transcending political divides with a vision focused solely on the betterment of our community. Her ability to unite, to find common ground, and to bridge gaps made her a beacon of hope in the boardroom and out in the community. Ms. Page's contributions will continue to echo in the policies, projects, and initiatives that shape the future of the Richmond region. As a career, she served as the United States Army for 21 years, beginning in the early 70s. She began involvement in local government in 2015 by joining the New Kent Clean County Committee, then ran for and was elected to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors, subsequently winning a re-election in 2019 and 2023. As a Board of Supervisors member, Ms. Page was devoted to getting youth involved in the community as well as supporting the elderly generation. This involvement led to the appointment of high school students to active county committees for the first time in New Kent County. She also worked to establish the Chickahominy Triad, an organization that works to protect the elderly through education. She promoted regionalism through her service and leadership on the Richmond Regional Planning District Commission, the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization Policy Board, the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority, and the Richmond Region Tourism Board of Directors. Push for expansion of Interstate 64 in New Kent. Specifically, Ms. Page fought for 9 years to have the expansion take place. In December 2022, a $25 million federal grant was announced for the expansion. In November 2023, Governor Glenn Youngkin announced $756 million project to widen a 29-mile stretch, the majority of which is in New Kent County. She served on the Central Virginia Transportation Authority from its inception in 2020. During her time on the CVTA, Ms. Page lobbied for interstate widening of 64 in New Kent. In June 2022, the authority voted to commit $1 million in the CVTA funding towards this.
$100 million.
What did I say?
1 million.
No, $100 million, my apologies. Thanks, toward this project. So let me just tell you something, and it's kind of interesting. In public service, you hear things, you see things, and a lot of what you see throughout places, somebody played a part in. I know, like when I travel, I'll see a bridge named, or I'll hear something, or I'll read a local newspaper. And that person is probably so important, so instrumental in that area. And yet, maybe I've never heard of them. I am here to tell you that 64 would not have been widened. It would not have taken place unequivocally without Patricia Page. It happened, and I will just recount this story briefly. So Carlos, who used to sit on CTV, they were having a meeting about something that was not 64 related. And so he called up and he said, Miss Page, he said, this meeting is not necessarily about 64 widening. He said, is there any way that we can keep that from coming into the discussion just for this meeting? She said, Carlos, if it doesn't need to come up, then it won't come up. So he handled what he needed to handle prior to the meeting, and it didn't come up. This year, our staff has nominated Ms. Page for the VA PDC 2024 Gordon Dixon Award. The award for this year, the Patricia Page Award, is actually going to be awarded posthumously to Ms. Page. So in her honor, could we all stand? By a show of applause and support for Ms. Page, we join together. Thank you all. At this time, we're going to have a moment of chair reflections. Mayor Stoney, we appreciate your service to the region, but certainly CVTA, we invite you to come up here and just share anything that you'd like for us to know, and anything that you think we don't know but would be of interest, like some internal, tea, we'll take that.
Well, we'll be talking about eating desserts with people, I'll tell you that. Give it up to Chairman Davis for his hard work. Chairman Holland, always, once again, good to be with you today as well. And another round of applause for the staff at Plan RVA. Because this goes on around the Commonwealth of Virginia, right? Different planning districts and whatnot, but I like to think that we have the best of the best. And when you think about the region, where it is today and where it was 20 years ago, it took some meticulous, intentional planning to get here. And as my time as the mayor of the capital city winds down, 6 months, 18 days, but who's counting? I think about what this region can be a decade from now, what this region can be 20 years from now. We all, if you're an elected official or you work on a team at a city hall or an administrative building in one of the counties, we deal with a lot of the here and now, right? We must be responsive to the residents in their here and now. But when you're in this room and you're in this building, you can talk about the future. And this is about casting that vision for what the region will look like 10, 20, 30 years down the line. Now, here's the thing. More and more people are choosing to live right here in this region. So we have to think globally about how do we go about accommodating these new individuals who've chosen to move their families, uproot their lives, and choose to live right here. A tool that we have in doing so is transportation planning and the CVTA. A little T is that lifetime to date, $700 million in tax receipts have flown to have been driven to the coffers of CVTA. Distributed out to many of the localities here in the room, but also focused on regional projects and on public transportation, the GRTC. A tool we did not have 10, 20 years ago, but we have today. So we have a responsibility, all of us together, Democrats, Republicans, but Richmonders, Central Virginians, to cast a vision of what we're gonna do with those dollars moving forward. And here's the thing, in this room, we have an opportunity to think big, right? The here and now, we have to sometimes be responsive to some of the smaller things. Folks expect the blocking and tackling to be done at the local level. But when we think about us as a region, as RVA, we get to think about big projects, big ideas. And so don't be afraid when you're in these rooms and you're on these boards to think about big ideas. That to me is what's gonna drive this region and allow us to keep our competitive advantage over Northern Virginia and over Hampton Roads. Because more and more people from those metros are moving in right here. And if we think small ball, then that's exactly what we're gonna be. But when we think big and think of large projects and large ideas that include everyone, not just certain people, I can guarantee you we will continue with our competitive advantage, and we will continue to be the best damn region in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank y'all so much.
It's now my pleasure I don't know why I keep introducing Jim Holland, we're
Oh, my
family.
goodness.
Now it's your time, Jim.
You gonna talk again? Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor's gonna be longer now.
That's a great pleasure.
I want to thank you all for being here. I told them long, I didn't tell them how long. Anyway, certainly, I want to thank you all for this convening even. This is unique. I remember when we didn't do this as well, so I want to thank you all, leaders, certainly of the past several years. And more importantly, I want to thank you all for your vision. Without a vision, the people will perish. And so I applaud your vision. And my friend, from the private sector, I thank you for talking about funding. We've heard that term, and of course, Dale knows it well. We've been billions and billions behind in transportation funding for years. For years, ever since I've been on a board, this board, TPO board, we've been talking about funding and billions of it. And also, I remember, for example, with CVTA, I thank you all. And of course, Mr. Carroll, who served as a prior chair, thank you for your leadership. He was our first appointed person from Chesterfield to serve with Mr. Thornton, who served as the first chair of CVTA. Mr. Thornton is a classic gentleman, and I'll mention him a moment or two later appropriately. But I remember when it was a pipe dream, I just didn't think it could come to pass when I was first elected. It was a pipe dream, but we got there, and we're here. Another area, another area, as Dr. Newgill and I noted earlier, was educational funding. Funding of education, which is a function of state and local, as you well know, because it's critically important that we continue to be the very best in those areas. And so I want to thank Mr. Engel and Dr. Newbill for championing that as it relates to the General Assembly. We don't need to study, just funding. I might add also some key highlights from 2024. We made significant advances in multimodal access across the region. Access West Broad Street BRTC corridor analysis. In July, advanced public transit through GRTC, Link Micro Transit. Thank you, Ms. Adams, for your leadership in that area. And also in my district, in Dale, we have micro transit. I have the app, by the way, so check it out if you don't. For Powhatan, Chesterfield, and Ashland, broke ground on the Fall Line Trail, Amy. Aren't you excited? And she was talking about riding it, by the way. Supported increased investments in local regional transportation providers. Leverage transportation alternatives funding through Smart Scale, which again is a big step forward. And revenue sharing, I might add also, don't forget that. And other federal programs. Advocated for improvement to the Smart Scale funding process, favoring regional project prioritization and consultation with MPOs throughout the state. Facilitated robust discussions regarding the region's most pressing transportation needs. And let me say that it's so important. I'll give you one little brief story if I can. I knew a mother who had to walk in the rain from her home in my district, and not my district, and another district, by the way, two districts, to get to the school to advocate for her child who had an IDP in the rain. It shouldn't be happening. Transportation should be available. And so it's pressing, and that's why I've always pressed for it. And I was the only advocate pressing for a route on Route 1, where the average income was like $25,000. Okay, so new standards for transportation safety targets, as you talked about earlier, safety, as Mr. Carroll, Supervisor Carroll mentioned, safety targets, being safe. It can be dangerous on some of these roads out here. Establishing goals to reduce safety incidents in the region year over year. Thank the staff for working on that. achieve full funding for the I-64 widening project. I have to tell you, when I voted on that project, I had so much admiration for Ms. Page. I would have voted no, except for her, because I believe federal funding should fund federal highways. Locals should be funding the locals, and state should be doing its portion. I just believe that fundamentally about government. Y'all be upfront, honest, and do what it's supposed to do. And so when you take it over, they step back. And so I voted for that project in this room for her, just because she was who she is and was. Thank you, Ms. Page. We're so very proud of her advocacy and her hard work. And prioritize public participation and engagement in transportation planning. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. I also thank the predecessor from Henrico, Mr. Thorpe, who always advocated for more public participation. What are we doing? Whom are we sharing it with? He advocated for that very thoughtfully. Engage the CTAC in update public engagement plan. Hosted annual transportation forums like today, emphasizing the role of public in the decision-making process and engaging the audience in the region's most important opportunities for transportation improvements. As Mr. Atkins said earlier, Abraham Lincoln also said, you can't get it done if you don't have public support. You can't even get elected if you don't have public support. The vote at the end of the day. And so Lincoln was right, as you probably know, a real leader. And that's why I'm so pleased we're celebrating Juneteenth this week in Chesterfield, as I shared with our business community yesterday. And the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1, 1863. And of course, Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years after that event. And I was asking as a CPA ought to, where is the funding going? Is there any accountability for those who didn't do right? How much reparation should we be looking at for 2.5 years of free labor? Okay, we gotta talk that talk. That wasn't in my script, I'm sorry, I went off script. And of course, adopted a robust unified plan and work program for 2025, focusing on renewed safety emphasis, rural public transportation, and an update of our region's long-range transportation plan, excuse me. And also, I want to take this opportunity to recognize, he's not here today, Mr. Hodges of Ashland, talking about rail safety. If you lived in Ohio, you would appreciate that. And so I'm pleased to see we're going forward with that. And so I want to thank him for his work. And I end with thanking you for, again, having vision. For if you don't have vision, funding doesn't matter. You don't know where you're going. You don't know how you're gonna get there, but funding is critical, as you can see with CVTA and the TPO, to get to where we need to be. And we've made significant strides in this region, as my friend from the Federal Highway Department will share with you. We've made significant strides, but let's do even better. Let's think big, as the mayor. I'm gonna echo him. I usually, with certain great ideas regionally, let's think big. Let's not only think big in transportation, but let's think big in education, which is one of the most pressing needs of every locality. Excellence in education. And I'll share as chairman of the Workforce Consortium Group, which of course, again, is that we have work to do. We have 80,000 people in our region who don't have a high school diploma or a GED, 80,000. So let's look at reading, education. You can't wait till the 3rd grade to start reading. You better be doing it in the first, okay? And some things we've done in Chesterfield has been remarkable. I thank our outgoing superintendent for his initiative in preschool education in Chesterfield, where I continue to say we gotta be excellent. If you're not getting better, we gotta talk to you. We gotta talk about you. So we have to do excellent. So I thank you for that. And that's why as a chairman initiative, I quadruple our funding to the Reed Center in the region. Not that we have as many people in it, but I quadruple funding for that because it's so important. As Jefferson once said, an educated and informed citizenry is the protection of freedom, democracy. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Howland. Mr. Steve Herring is with us. He's going to deliver his remarks and reflections. Mr. Herring is the Vice Chair of the Emergency Management Alliance of Central Virginia. Mr. Herring, please join us with some of your remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for allowing me this moment to speak. As was stated, my name is Stephen Herring. I'm the chair of the Emergency Management Alliance of Central Virginia. And just by show of hands, who has heard of the Alliance before? Good, that's great. So for those who may not know, our Alliance is a coalition of local, state, nonprofit, community-based partners and other key stakeholders whose sole goal is to meet, share best practices, and share information and collaborate on emergency management, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And I was extremely excited to hear about emergency management earlier. That warmed my heart. Our footprint includes over 25 localities, 4 tribal nations, 7 planning district commissions, 3 different VDEM regions, 3 Virginia State Police regions, 9 different health districts, and includes over 150 professionals. Participation within our alliance is free to those professionals, and we are always looking for new people to attend. We have a fantastic partnership with Plan RVA. They act as our fiduciary agent, and they apply for and manage State Homeland Security Program grant funds on behalf of the Alliance, which we use within our committees to really enhance local and regional resiliency within our footprint. Our committees include mass care, so how can we improve community sheltering, mass feeding, family assistance center planning. Planning committee, which includes how can we improve emergency planning overall throughout the region, throughout our footprint, and drill down to our localities to make sure that we are helping them build resiliency. Outreach, how can we continue to improve community preparedness and use our alliance as a framework and support for our localities and providing them with community preparedness and education resources. Our Community Emergency Response Team Committee, our volunteer management committee that really supports our local CERT programs throughout our footprint to make sure that they have the resources to educate and manage their volunteers. And our Training and Exercise Committee, which really builds upon trying to support our localities as they work to train and exercise their emergency plans to build resiliency and make sure that they have all the tools they need to respond when a disaster happens. So what have we done over FY24? What have we accomplished? We really have identified and collaborated and worked on key projects. One of the big things is back on May 10th, our Mass Care Committee conducted a Mass Care Symposium. It was an all-day event in which various mass care topics was shared by subject matter experts and was attended by over 120 professionals from across the state, including in emergency management, social services, mental health, and other key areas. So we were very, very excited with that symposium. Our planning committee last year conducted a business recovery project and workshop in which they went to the Chamber RVA and talked about how we can build business resiliency and develop a toolkit which we will be working to expand to other regions and other planning districts to make sure that we are working to enhance business resiliency. Our outreach committee has been partnering with the Flying Squirrels on an annual basis to hold preparedness nights on various occasions, and we will be doing that once again later this year. Our CERT committee not only last year held a skills rodeo to bring volunteers from multiple localities together to exercise and train all in one, they have been able to utilize those SHSP funds that Plan RVA manages on behalf of the Alliance to purchase a database, a singular database for all of the CERT programs in our region that they can use to manage their volunteers and then work interoperably with one another. And then our Training and Exercise Committee has been working diligently to not only support training and exercises in the region, but also community events. We have what is called the Exercise Support Unit. It's this trailer filled with a whole bunch of resources that we provide to localities to conduct training and exercises. And that will actually be here today during Plan RVA Day if anybody would like to take a look at that. We are very much looking forward to FY25. As stated earlier, we will be continuing with our annual preparedness partnership with the Richmond Flying Squirrels, and we are making our Mass Care Symposium an annual event that we'll be conducting, so we're looking forward to holding that in FY25. I would once again like to thank Martha and Plan RVA for their continued partnership with the Alliance. Without them, we would not be able to do all of the great work we are doing to support resiliency, not only at the local level, but at the regional level. And I would like to thank all of you for your time to listen here today about the Alliance and all the great work we are doing, and thank you all for everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herring.
you've heard me talk a lot today, and I think it's important to set the foundation about people, the folks we serve with, and so on and so forth. I think it's important because nothing happens. We're not AI, right? They're real people making real decisions, and you have to know folks. You have to get to know them. If you don't know them, you have to talk about challenging things. And it may have been glossed over. Not everybody in this room agrees all the time on everything. I mean, sometimes there are nuances and sometimes there are major issues. But the reason I bring the personal factor in is because a leadership position devoid of personal interaction just doesn't take place. You have to get your job done, you have to deliver, and you have to take care of your people. There's a lot that falls underneath that, but you have to know your job, you have to know what that core mission is, and you have to get that done, you have to deliver. But I think the people, as I reflect, are what means something because things aren't delivered. I have been extremely fortunate and blessed to have a number of conversations with Dr. Miller, who I think understands people and how folks think in a way that is intimate to how they set policy and is important. We're formed by our experiences. All of us come to a belief or a position by our experiences. And I think that's why it's important to come around and talk about things here regionally. So that said, it's in just a feel-good moment as I talk about folks. Let me go over some of the things that Plan RVA has delivered, because at the end of the day, it's in the social club. It's not a place just to come grab coffee and talk about, ideas in a vacuum. We must get our job done. So, a $1 million award from the US EPA for the development of the region's first climate pollution reduction plan. We completed the implementation of the PDC housing grant provided by Virginia Housing, a $3 million award administered by Plan RVA. We're administering that by Plan RVA in the Partnership for Housing Affordability, exceeding our contracted goal of 30 units by 200 funding projects in each of the localities and bringing in additional capacity to the region's nonprofit housing development organizations to address the increased cost of land, development, and construction. We have increased the community presence and recognition as the region's convener. That was a direct initiative of the executive committee, and that has happened. It's happened, that it was non-negotiable. The executive committee said, Davis, this is what we want to see. And then they all came together, provided that support, passed that on to Martha, to our staff. It came back and we monitored that. We provided input and direction, and that has happened. So much so that Plan RVA has supported the attendance of the local elected officials at the 2024 intercity visit hosted by Chamber RVA. First time all 9 localities were represented on this trip, the very first time. Continued partnership with the Community Foundation, Chamber RVA, and the United Way in developing a framework for action promoting economic mobility across the region. Recognition at the state and national levels for innovation and impact with the NATO Innovation Awards, Virginia Emergency Management Association Annual Conference. It was huge. So we're facing a national election in 2024. There'll be challenges, as they are with any national election, and what will happen in the halls of Congress, what will take place at the White House. We're committed to continuing to plan for leadership and transition in this area. We hosted the first ever newly elected reception over at the Henrico Sports Center, and that just came as a vision for, you can't just have folks meet for the first time when they walk into a room and hand them an agenda packet. Would y'all agree with that? Yeah. I mean, that just doesn't work. So I commend the folks on the leadership team for making that happen, and Martha and staff for getting the logistics worked out and the administration of that. And we continue to engage our elected officials in dialogue on the region's most important issues, including hosting and discussing K-12 funding. Where's Mr. Engel? Doctor?
There we go.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. First time ever. K-12 funding from the General Assembly in the wake of the JLARC report evaluating investments across the Commonwealth. So I just want to say this, because this is probably my last speech. I guess I'll open up the meeting in July. No? All right. Well, it's going to be longer than I thought.
Okay.
No. So I was reading the other day, and I find this interesting. This is not a slight on anybody. It shouldn't be looked at in any other way than just material context. But Harry Truman
was having bourbon with Sam Rayburn, all right, speaker, and Rayburn's a building up there, when he got a call that he needed to go to the White House. Now, Harry Truman did anybody know how many times Truman had spoken to Roosevelt? Roosevelt had spoken to Truman in their lifetime? What? With 3? Yeah, 2 times. 2 times, that's right, John. So he gets a call from someone at the White House, and he gets there. When he gets there, the First Lady is dressed in black. You know why he was called to the White House? President died. He had spoken to his vice president twice. Now, that is no indication of leadership on either side. That's just how things went. Now, keep in mind, was there anything big going on during that time? There was a world war. There was a global war. And so you think about those types of things, how things have changed. When you go and you speak with someone, you say, hey, Kev, I need to talk to you about this. And we don't always agree. And Kevin's kind of a shrinking violet. It's hard for him to come out and tell people what he thinks. But we had a meeting in one of our rooms over there one time, and I'm glad the door was shut because between Kevin and I having differences of opinion, and he later realized I was right and he was wrong, we thought it might be important that we had to hear each other. And I didn't think he could hear me unless I raised my voice, and he didn't think I could hear him unless he raised his voice. But we worked it out, and it was a challenging time. We had our own stresses in each one of our organizations. We weren't mad, but we were certainly passionate about something. You have to work together, and that can be tough, particularly when you go back home and folks think, well, this just happened at a meeting. It does not happen without the vision and leadership of the folks in this room. And you can never forget, all personalities aside, you have to do what must be done in order to deliver what we're duty bound to deliver. You have to. Regardless of what takes place, regardless of personalities, policy matters, you have to find a way to win. And it's on you. It's on nobody else. If you walk out of a room, and we all know that here, we don't have that issue. And again, that does not mean that these are just kumbaya moments. Folks in here have very different beliefs sometimes, but the things that come together, and that is just a short list of wins, just a short list of wins. So I just want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your chair, to serve on this important commission, and to serve in this organization. I want to thank Martha for her support. You've all been fantastic. I consider you friends and colleagues, and many of you like family. Thank you for that opportunity. The time.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
She went on script.
There you go. There we go.
Awesome. That bottle of liquor.
I'm not chair anymore, so there's nothing I can do about it. You got it.
Is there bourbon in that one?
Let's hope so.
We just wanted to say thank you to both Mr. Holland and to Mr. Davis for your leadership this year. Thank you both so much. We've put together gift baskets featuring many of the local goods and treats from around the region. So you'll find a little description and maybe discover some new appetizing items that come from this region. So thank you all so much. We thought that this was a wonderful way to celebrate the service that both of you and the leadership that both of you have given to the organizations.
Thank you.
So thank you.
You're all very kind. Thank you for that. I'll just end with this. Lead always, no matter the situation. So let's go do our jobs. The time is 11:27. We are adjourned.